Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dr. Doctor, the show where no topic is too hot or too cold. Whether it's politics, religion, relationships, entertainment, or everyday life, you will be hearing from the experts. This show is not for the faint of heart or the faint of mind. But if you want to be inspired, you have come to the right place. And now, prepare to be enlightened as we introduce the host of Dr. Doctor, Dr. Peter Tassi, and his close advisor, Dr. Fooch.
Welcome to Dr. Doctor. We want to let you know that, as you already know, we are not doctors from universities with those fancy degrees. We are doctors of life experiences. Dr. Fooch and I have been through it all, the ups and downs, the good times and the bad. And from our life experiences, we have granted ourselves this honorary degree as doctors. Today our topic is how we grew up 50 years ago. You know, the one thing that when you look back on history, Dr. Fooch, you see that there were critical things that happened, or critical inventions. You know, if you go back to the beginning of time, there were thousands and thousands of critical things that happened that caused evolution. But if we go back into our primitive stage, we see inventions like fire changed the world. The wheel changed the world. Farming. We went from being nomadic, going from land to land, following animals for food, to permanently putting ourselves in one place and building civilizations. More recently, in the last few hundred years, we see the invention of the printing press and electricity. Completely changed the world, completely changed the way generations lived and how we progressed and evolved. I think for our generation, that critical invention that changed the world and made life so different compared to when we grew up 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when we were young kids, is the computers. Computers have completely changed every facet of our life. And when we were growing up, there was no such thing as computers. Computers as we know it. There were very primitive form of computers that were used by the military, but we never knew of it, and it wasn't used in society at large. So our world was so much different. And one of the things I think of when we go back in time, when we were kids, I think that things were more compartmentalized. Like, we got up in the morning, we went to school, and we were only at school. That was our focus all day, was school, because you didn't have phones, you weren't communicating with people outside of school, you weren't looking on the internet, everything was school. And then after school was our sport, whether it was football or whatever activity we did, and we only focused on that sport. And then we went home, we had supper, we went out into the street, played hockey till 9 o'clock at night, and our parents called us in. That was a very simple life that we lived compared to the lives today that I think the young generation lives. I mean, even with any kind of media, we only had, 7 channels on the TV? Yeah, 7 channels and black and white TVs. So there wasn't much to watch. It wasn't like we were in the house all night looking at what to look on TV or what to look on YouTube or computers or communicate. No, after supper we went outside, played hockey on the street or football on the street till our parents called us in when it started to get dark, went in the house, went to bed. Life seemed to be very simple for us. And what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody, all our listeners. back in our days, we pretty much were the tail end of the baby boomer. And that was a big, big, big change. And it was almost like, I just call it Leave It to Beaver days in the community, in the neighborhood. In those days, we had stay-home moms.
Yes.
And
we
families
all
had-
had stay home. I think
Right.
every one of
Under,
us.
under
Stats-
one person was the sole income.
Yeah.
Now, the unique thing about all this is, even my children have learned that world that I grew up in. In fact, they're actually using it on their kids. Try to keep it nice and simple. But anyway, let's get back to our days. Our days were so delightful, as you can remember the neighborhoods, okay?
Yes.
We had the stay-home moms.
Yeah.
We ate out of the garden for health.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember coming from our families, we were doing preservatives, fruits for the winter.
Yeah.
We were doing meat products, we were doing things like that. And one of the funniest things I could remember when we were young, my dad used to take us out in a farmer's field to pick dandelions, which in a town we call that chicoria.
Right.
And the unique thing was we would gather so much of it, bring it home, and I remember my mother's eyes, okay? Oh my God, now we all have to clean this. Yeah, we cleaned it, down in the tubs downstairs, clean it. Then we would boil it.
Right.
And it would be like a spinach
out like a
afterwards,
spinach,
okay? We
yeah.
would freeze it. And the unique thing, my father, he was always a health nut. The water we boiled it in, he would put it in bottles and put it in the fridge.
Ah.
Because the bottle was green with nutrients
Yes,
in that.
yes.
And we would drink that.
Dandelions, very nutritious. Yeah.
Right, we did things like that. And even in the neighborhood, we had great multiculturalism when we grew up.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing the same thing. As you mentioned, simple life, okay?
Yeah.
And you did touch on, like, there are only certain things we did. We went to school, and after school, I can recall we all had some kind of a job to do for a few dollars. Like, remember the days of the paper routes?
Yeah. I had one.
I remember helping you.
Yeah.
And I used to go on Friday nights was collection.
Yes.
And it was funny when you used to say, I think these people are going to give us a tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we would want that 50-cent tip or whatever. Then you'd split it with me because I come along with you, okay?
Yeah.
We did things were just fantastic. I remember in our neighborhood, after school in the wintertime, we'd all rush home to get a shovel
Yeah.
and go shovel snow for $5
Yeah.
or
yeah.
$2 or whatever, okay? And then the funny thing about, we get home just before supper time. We'd have to clean the snow in front of our homes and things like that. And I remember at times where I would be downing the food at the supper table. My parents would saying, don't eat so fast. Oh, no, I want to get out there again with the snow shovel.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would do things. And of course, we held a lot of part-time jobs, like let's say seasonal cut lawns, clean eave troughs.
Yeah. Work was so much a part of our upbringing, and I didn't mention that. But even the work was simple, things like that, shoveling snow, cutting grass. I think we were all working by the time we were 11. I can remember working on the farms in the summer. I'm talking summer.
God, I can remember that.
Summer work, we were all working. All you, me, all the guys, we were all working by the time we were 11, working the farms, working car washes. But in spite of all that activity, it was very simple. It wasn't complicated.
Yeah, but we had
Fun.
nothing else to distract us.
Right.
Because remember,
Right.
in our homes, we
Exactly.
had one TV, 7-8 channels, and
Yeah.
of course our parents commanded what would be on the channel, but their selection of whether it was a movie, and there was so much comedy in those days,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
We learned from that. And as far as communication, there was only one phone in the house.
Right.
And if we used it too much, our parents would get on us on it.
Yes. One phone in the house. And the phone, I remember in your house, my house, and some of the other guys, the phone is always in the kitchen. So your parents heard every word you'd say. You could never have a
Yeah, but
private.
remember-
You could never have a private conversation.
Yeah, but I try to. I don't know if you remember, okay, at times, I get a call from you or somebody or whatever, eh?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that family room off to the right.
Yes.
I would drag that little phone line in there and whisper on the phone.
Yeah.
Now-
But that line wasn't long. We couldn't drag that phone too far away
Right. Now,
from.
if we were talking to a girl,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
oh my God, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? If the parent came around
boy.
the corner, my face would turn red. I'd have to end the
You
conversation.
know, my whole teen life, I can never remember talking to a girl on the phone. I do it at school. Or
Well-
we would arrange to meet at a certain time. Or you make the phone call when your parents aren't in the kitchen. But that was rare because our mothers were always in the
Oh
kitchen.
my God.
They're never out of the kitchen.
They were visible.
Yeah, they're right there listening to every word you say. And I can remember doing the same thing as you, talking, whispering on the phone, or using some kind of code. Sometimes I'd say to you or Danny or Ferg or any of the guys, I'd say, let's meet me at 5 in front of the house. We'll be playing hockey or whatever.
Yeah.
Meet me at 5 in front of the house and we'll talk about it. Because you
Exactly.
couldn't talk in front of your parents. And this went right up until we left for university, right up till we were 19
Well,
years
even
old.
17, 18 years old. And I remember for myself, also another part-time job, okay, I started playing out music when I was 12 years old. Now I'm in a different social world.
Yeah.
And then I would get phone calls, let's say about music or something like that, or something, and then somebody saw me at a gig and I get my phone number or something like that, or if
Right.
I'm playing for a wedding or something like that. I had to be very, very careful.
Yes.
And what I would say, another fear, I don't know if you remember this or not. Let's say you had a brother or sister and you're occupying that phone time too long. They
yeah.
would get jealous of you.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother especially, he'd creep around the corner and hear me talking and he'd go rat on whatever I said to my mother. Then I get scolded by my mother.
Of course. Too much time. Our time on the phone
That was our only communication.
It was very limited. It was never private.
Yeah, but can you? We didn't have text. We couldn't text.
No, it's a landline.
Yeah, but you know what kind of communication we had? We were in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. We had to learn how to make a walkie-talkie. They tell us, okay, come with 2 empty cans
Yeah.
and with a wire. I don't remember that. Okay, that was our only communication, and I never believed that the message could go through that line anyway.
Yeah.
So it was all fun. But I'd like to talk about one very important thing, and thank God that there are a lot of families that maintain this, right from young families today with their kids.
Yeah.
Maintain that philosophy or whatever you want to call it during the baby boomer. It was so important. The most important time was the family get together at supper time.
Yes.
The strength of love,
Yes,
values, dynamics,
I was going to mention the
and
same
the
thing.
communication.
That was a must.
We learned
You-
from that, which I passed on as a father with mine.
Yeah.
And it's unique. My son, kids, everything.
Yeah.
And and there are families, nobody leaves that supper table. Not to run
Right.
to watch what's on TV.
No.
Not to do this, not that. Everybody stayed there.
Yes, you stayed till everybody finished eaning.
Exactly. And
Period.
everybody fed
Yep.
off of feeding, information,
Yeah.
dynamics. It was
Yeah.
just phenomenal.
Yes, there was no option like, oh, I'm going to be late for dinner tonight, Mom. I'll eat on my own. Everybody, we all ate every night at the same time, sat at that table. It was mandatory. And like you say, a lot of wonderful discussions and a lot of building a family and expressing
family-
our ideas. I mean, there were arguments at that table too sometimes.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
But that's where we aired it.
Exactly. Now, it probably happened with you, okay, because you had brothers, sisters, and things like that. Your parents gave each one responsibilities through the week. Who's
Oh, yeah.
Who's putting out the garbage?
Yeah.
Well, there's garbage in the kitchen.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes.
had.
We had a
who's gonna
schedule.
wash it?
Again, it was simple.
We
had
didn't have a
schedule.
washer dryer, did we? No, we didn't.
Well, we had a wringer washer, but no dryer. We hang the clothes outside.
No, I'm talking about after supper.
Yes. Well, yeah, those chores, we were the same. We had chores it was on a list. Everybody, tonight, you do the dishes, you vacuum, you this, you that. I mean, that wasn't all the time. But yeah, we had those chores. It was very clear.
And if anything in those days, I can recall, even the baby boom and the tail end, that's where we came from, was the tail end. Mm-hmm. If any interest outside of everything, our parents would say, learn a musical instrument. And that was it.
That was, yes.
We didn't have the resources for this and for that and everything
no.
else.
No, I think that a lot of the simple life we lived had a lot to do with our parents not having much money. Like my father walked to work for years before we had our first car. Now it's not uncommon for the teenagers to have cars. The parents both have cars. We were lucky. The first car we got, we were all, I can't remember the exact age, but there was no cars. And when we got a car, it was one car forever. And when we learned to drive, we were 16, 17, we shared the car.
Exactly.
We had to rely on Dad being good enough to let us use his car. And of course, then your sibling wants to use the car. And so it was a whole day. I'm not saying that it was better. It's nice now that everybody's got a car. It's nice now that all the
because
kids have
we're living
cars.
such a fast-paced life.
And they have computers and they have all these things. It's nice. It's just that it was different. Mm-hmm. It was a different world. You know the other thing? Yeah, go ahead.
Here's one thing, okay, that was very important to all of us. And you had mentioned played hockey and things like that. Like, I think it's the greatest thing in the world. Today, when I see kids play hockey on the street, exactly what we did was fantastic. Remember play hockey on the street?
Yeah.
And we did baseball on all I can remember in the street you grew up into as well, around the corner from where I lived. We would play baseball on the street. And one day I said, let's play hardball instead of softball. I hit a hardball. It flew, went through somebody's second-story window.
Yeah.
Boy, did we learn how to run, because in those days they would call the cops on us.
Of course.
And if the cops came, that's how we learned how to run and climb fences and be chased.
Yeah.
But the biggest fear was a phone call going home.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
But we had, like, the only resources we had was outdoors in the wintertime. We'd go to the park to learn how to skate, play hockey.
Yeah.
Tobogganing, that was great. And the only sports was at the Y, I remember. We didn't have all the rec centers. I honestly really have to say in our city is doing such a fantastic job right now to facilitate, like in the rec centers, all the variety of sports. Is fantastic right now. Well, not to mention the money they put into the parks.
Yes.
Where they're putting basketball courts up.
Yes.
I love when I see teenagers.
What they have today for the kids is great. So, you know, when we were that age, we had the sports, but it was different. If you weren't playing school sport, there was only the CYO.
That's right.
It was through the church.
Exactly.
Everything was through the church. The sports were through the church.
That was great.
Yeah, the even
Cub Scouts.
Even our dances, guys and girls dances. You had to go to the church. Of course, the priest is chaperoning.
The parish hall?
The parish hall. Priest is watching every move you make. The nuns too. And
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
at high school we had a little bit more freedom because bigger
Oh, sure,
gym,
your age.
bigger gym. The teachers can't see you, but yeah,
And
everything.
live bands.
Sports.
Remember the live bands?
All live bands, but sports, dances, socializing, all through the church and through the school. But today, hey, it's better. They have rec centers. They have all kinds
I
of
cannot
teams and groups and everything.
believe right now, and even in our school system is doing such a great job with all the different venues now. And music is huge in the high school ends.
Yeah.
You know, one other point I'd like to make, tell me a little about yourself, okay? As being a handyman, how'd you learn how to be handyman?
Well,
From your dad,
Well, the thing is,
like
too,
painting and all that. How's that?
I think the advantage we had too is that back then, we've said this 100 times already, everything was simpler. So let's take, for example, cars. You know, we never had that much money. Our families never had money. And as much as we worked, you didn't make the kind of money you could make in later years. So when you had a car, you had to learn to fix it yourself. And cars back then were easier to fix. You
Exactly.
can't work on a car now. You can't teach yourself. You need all high-end computers, everything. Back then, change a starter, change plugs, do a tune-up, do a brake job. I could do all that.
An oil change was simple.
Oil changes. You taught yourself to save money. And, I mean, even the trades were easier. You know, it's not like today, these kids, they got to go to school 5 years to be a bricklayer or this or that. The trades were easy. You learned them by apprenticing, almost like they did in the 1400s.
Yeah, but we learned by hand.
Yeah, you learned by going there and
Be
right, a
creative.
form of apprenticing.
Creativeness was
Yeah, you're
we were
right, you're
brought
right
up-
on the job.
Isn't it interesting? We grew up in that tail end of the baby boom. That I have to say that was creativeness. We
Yes.
had to learn
You had to be
creativeness
creative,
inside us.
Yes,
Which
yes.
everybody's born with anyway, okay?
Yes, we're
It's
all
just
born-
that we were
yeah.
pretty fortunate, okay? With no choice, it came out. Like you
Yeah.
were saying, fix this, do that. We
Yeah.
learned how to paint. We learned how to do construction. We learned how to mix masonry and things like that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
Because later on in life, believe me, the prosperity was unbelievable and our creativeness grew. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes, and you know, I think that the thing we had going for us too is that our life was simple in terms of choices, like getting back to doing jobs. We all knew, and this is where I feel sorry for kids today. It's very difficult for kids today. It's very confusing, but back then we all knew that we didn't have to spend any time, basically no time, trying to figure out what we were going to do in life because there was so much to do. So when we were in high school, we did have the 2-4-5 year program based on what you thought you would go into, whether it was the trades, labor, or the professions. But basically, there was no stress. You're in school. You're in grade 11. You're in grade 12. What do you want to do? Somebody asks you. Oh, I'm not sure. Well, what's the difference? If you wanted, you could go tomorrow and get a job at Dofasco. You don't want to work there, go to Stelco, go Procter & Gamble, go Westinghouse, go here, go there. You want to get into a trade? You didn't have to go to college for 5 years and do co-op and all this stuff. You just went down to the local trades guy, start working in the auto shop and learning the trade. They did have schooling, but the options were so... We could do anything we wanted to do. They were all there, and every option paid a good buck. Whether it was factory life, trade life, professions.
And the cost of living is nowhere near how it is
Cost of
today.
living was
today,
cheap.
the cost of living. That's why
Post-secondary-
you have to have two incomes.
Yes, post-secondary was cheap. Remember how cheap it was to go to university and college? So I feel sorry for the kids today because it's way more complicated. Like, they have to really spend a lot of time and energy on trying to figure out what they're going to do that's going to pay a buck. Back then, we could choose from 1,000 different things to do, and they
Yeah, but
all
that's-
paid a decent buck.
And the reason why it's more difficult today is because of technology advancement is moving so fast you can't even keep up to it anymore.
Right, exactly.
Look at computerization. Let's say if you wanted to, I remember our days, okay, let's say, oh geez, we had options. Let's say it took machine shop or something like that in school, okay? Today, you have to go further into the colleges
Yeah.
because these machines are all set up in computerization and programs. Those days we did everything
and
manually.
artificial intelligence now is taking all the jobs. So kids have to be very zoned into, hey, what's it going to be like in 5 years? What jobs are going to be available of the few jobs that are left that you can do, that I can make a half decent living?
Can you?
But you know what? Let's talk about fun. The fun we had. You know.
Oh, boy.
We had fun all the time.
We're at the park.
You know, and simple. Going back to the word simple. Simple things were fun. Getting your sleeping bag and sleeping on the front porch. All the guys. 7 of us laid across the front. That was like we were
was
going
summer.
to. We went to
It
Florida.
was a
for-
vacation.
yeah, that was a vacation. Sleeping on the front porch with a sleeping bag, and even a notch up from that. Remember how we'd set up a tent in the backyard, a little pup tent, and we'd sleep in the pup tent and talk half the night.
Yeah,
To
but
us, that was the greatest,
Yeah, but-
the most fun you could possibly have in life.
Yeah, but remember, okay, we brought like a bottle of Coca-Cola
Yeah,
and chips, cheesies, and things like that.
yeah,
Now, I'll tell you the funniest things is, but then we'd have to get permission from our parents. We're going to be sleeping outside
yes,
in a tent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. They have to know what we're up to.
Yeah.
But I think the thing they didn't know what we were up to, if you recall, everybody had a garden at night. A garden, okay?
Yes.
And in August, there was a couple times I remember, okay? Still kind of hungry. We'd hop the fence. Look at those carrots.
yeah,
Let's pull them out and eat 'em, or even corn.
and tomatoes.
But the corn.
Well, that was that. I don't know if we should talk about those crimes we committed.
Yeah, but they're not crimes. You know, you're like, 12, 13
Yeah,
years old.
that
Come
was-
on.
that was adventurous to us.
That was, and that
adventurous.
was funny too.
Stealing people's carrots and tomatoes and eating them.
Borrowing them.
Borrowing them.
Let's use the word borrow.
Borrow.
You know, there's one point I'd like to bring about, to mention is, can you recall at the age 12 and 13, what it was like when we hit identity crisis? Generally between 12 and 13, youth hits that identity
Yes,
crisis.
yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. I
An
remember-
identity.
Yes.
What sort of identity can you remember for yourself? I'll tell you about mine.
Yeah. Tell me, because I remember it, but it's faint. That area is faint. You know, I remember around 13 starting to find some identity in whether or not girls like me, and of course in the sports.
Or they're
I
looking
played.
at you.
Yeah, whether they're looking at you. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
and
You know, the guy-girl thing.
Yeah, and of course sports I played. You find some identity there, but what did you find?
Well, having played music, and making, cheap dollars
You were making money.
Oh,
playing
yeah.
drums in bands. I remember that.
in
yeah.
bands and things
Yeah,
like that
at
at
that young
12,
age.
12 years old.
Yeah.
To me, the identity crisis was, am I going to be a rocker now? I started growing my hair because in those days, okay, that's when the Beatles had made it big and everybody's wearing that
Yeah, we're
long
all-
hair thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't get into growing beards and things like that.
No.
So to me, a rocker identity. Now my parents would say, "Well, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. What happened to your education here?" And people took on different identity crises.
Yes, yes.
How they would look, what they would wear, and things like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of distracts which is normal.
Yeah.
As to what route am I going to take throughout my high school years or post-secondary and things like that.
Right. No different than today. That's
Exactly.
basically the same. But yeah.
But that was
Right.
fun. But can you recall like fun? I'll tell you.
Well,
How
I
many laughs?
remember one night was especially, I don't know if you'd call it fun. But we were sleeping in the backyard in a tent. And we ran out of our chips and pop and everything else we were eating. And we probably weren't in the mood to raid a garden. So what we did at that time, the only Tim Hortons in Canada was just down the block from us.
The first
one. First and only one. It was about 5 blocks from us.
I remember that.
And it was about midnight or 11 o'clock at night. And we're teenagers. But it's dark. And back then, unlike today, there's curfews. So we went down the Tim Hortons. We walked down Ottawa Street, down the Tim Hortons. It's only 4 or 5 blocks. We're all non-troubling kids. We don't cause problems. We don't get in fights or steal or, well, outside of carrots. And what do we see? A cop coming up the street.
Oh, I remember.
And we scattered. Somebody yelled cop, and there's about 5 of us. We scattered in 5 different directions.
Up driveways and over fences and yards.
I hid behind a bush. The cop came up with a flashlight, rounded us all up, found every one of us hiding like little scared rabbits.
Wait a minute. I didn't get caught.
No.
Are you sure I got caught that
No,
time?
you didn't get caught because you stayed in the tent.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you stayed in the tent. You
Oh,
said.
you know what I said?
You said.
I had a gut feeling you
Yeah,
better
you
not do this. There's going to be problems.
You said to all of us.
That's what it was.
You said to all of us, I smell trouble.
That's right. I said
Yeah.
I smell trouble.
Yeah, and I said something like, well, wait till we bring the donuts back from Tim Hortons and you smell those, you'll be eating them. But anyway, he brought us all home back to the tent.
I remember
We
that, the flashlight thing.
Yeah, with the flashlight. You were in the tent with your eyes peeking out of the
And he put
thing.
the flashlight to my eyes.
Yeah, you look like a raccoon there with the eyes there. And all of us, but I remember what we were petrified of. It wasn't so much being caught, being brought back to the tent, being told don't stay in the tent, don't wander around tonight, boys, by the cop. I thought he was going to bring us home. And our parents, it would have been bad news.
End of sleeping out.
End of sleeping out. No more sleeping out. But anyway, it was adventures like that really, but they were simple, they were innocent, we had so much fun. And
laugh about it the next day.
yeah, and you know, you talk about the cops, the way they were. I mean, I was brought home a couple times by cops, but a few times.
They were tough too.
Yeah, and it was a community that raised us because from our parents' perspective, the cops were always right, and the teachers were right.
Exactly.
So when you went to school,
we were
like
governed
I say,
by their rule.
yeah, like I said before, compartmentalized. Our parents didn't have to contact us with cell phones during the day. We're in the hands of teachers. Teachers know what they're doing. They're always right, whether they're not right or not. The police, they bring you home. The police are always right. Don't argue. Don't discuss. Now you're being disciplined. You're going to be punished. And so everything was very simple. It wasn't like, you know, every time something happened to us, it was litigated by lawyers, parents, community, other parents on the street. No. What they said was right. The case closed. No argument. So it was a very simple kind of life that we
But it
lived in.
brought so many, whatever it was, it brought so many laughs.
Yes, we spent a lot of time, eh?
It was just laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing.
Dr. Fooch, I remember as kids, we laughed constantly. We relied on humor to humor ourselves. We didn't have really the TV with 400 stations. We didn't have computers. We didn't have YouTube and all these other things. So it was a great time in our life. A great time growing up 50 years ago.
But you know, your kids, and even my kids, when they become, you know, later on in life, they're going to look at their life and talk about it and laugh about it.
Exactly.
And even the next generation.
Yes.
So it's all good.
It's all good.
It's fantastic.
It's all good. And the reason why we did this topic today is because one of our listeners asked us, will you talk about what it was like to grow up 50 years ago? So, like you say, every generation, and our kids will have great stories and great memories. And, but I think the best way to sum it all up for us is simplicity. Everything was simple.
Yeah, but even today, okay, whatever you do, try under the conditions of today, okay? Keep everything simple. Keep the thought simple.
Yes.
When you go from point A to point B,
right.
Don't jump with confusion over B to C.
Good advice.
The complexity today in any issue, I don't care what it is, keep it as simple as possible, and you'll find that answer on the tip of your nose.
Yes. Good point. And some people may look at the way we haven't shared much today, and we could go on for hours about what it was like 50 years ago. But some people will say, well, that was kind of a dictatorship society where the police were always right, the teachers were always right, the parents were always right. But what it did for us is it made life simple. We didn't spend half our time arguing with everybody. We didn't spend half our time anxiety,
anger, day and night,
litigating every case and telling our parents this guy did this, that, this. It was very simple. Listen to your parents, because parents aren't perfect and they aren't always right. But your life is much simpler when you listen to your parents and assume that they're right, unless they're really out there. Same with your teachers. Same with the police. Make your life simple. Don't go around, like you say, anxiety, arguing with everybody, and going nowhere fast. Yes.
I just mentioned one more thing before we closing.
Yes.
How we grew up. When you mentioned, the law, the police, are the teachers and parents. If we disagreed with them, it's interesting today how it all comes back as to why they were that way.
Yes.
It always turned out, whether we disagreed back then, it turned out prosperous.
Yes.
Because at that age, we couldn't understand until you go through life experiences, and a lot of things come back to you why things were this way.
Yes.
And it made you a better person today.
And even to this day, I look for simplicity. That's why I watch shows like Andy of Mayberry, Leave It to Beaver, and all these very
Jackie Gleason, The Honeymooners. Alice, you're going to the moon.
Yeah, very simple life, very simple way of looking at things. Well, Dr. Fuchs, that brings us to an end today. I hope our viewers and listeners out there enjoyed the show. We talked about what one of our listeners wanted us to. What was it like to grow up 50 years ago? And I hope you join us next week. If you'd like a digital copy of the book, The History of Time, From the Big Bang to the Present, write us at drdrpodcast@yahoo.com, and we'll send you that over the internet. If you have any views or comments on today's show, or would like us to cover a topic that might be interesting to you, again, write us at drdrpodcast@yahoo.com. Thanks for joining us today, and we wish you a great week.